Welcome to Inspire Campfire, a podcast where ordinary people tell their stories of extraordinary adventure. These are campfire stories meant to inspire the rest of us to light the fire within, get outside, follow our dreams, and return to tell our own stories. Ready? Let's strike the match.
Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Scott Wurzbacher, and today's guest is someone who learned early on to prioritize experiences over things. She'll take us to the Patagonia region of Chile to share her adventure on the W Trek, a journey that's right at the top of my own travel list. Sarah Safir is a product manager in digital consulting based in New York City. Despite living in one of the busiest cities in the world, she understands the grounding impact of nature and adventure. She's traveled to 54 countries and counting. She's completed several multi-day treks around the globe, and she's built an inspiring work hard, play hard lifestyle that blends both ambition and exploration. Today, she'll guide us through some of her travels with a spotlight on the W Trek and reveal how she's crafted a life that blends hard work and adventure. Sarah, welcome to the campfire.
Thank you so much. What a lovely entrance. I love that. I can't wait to show that to my mom. She'll be thrilled.
She'll be so proud. This is such a fun episode because you and I actually met quite recently on a trek on the Tour de Mont Blanc in the Alps. And super fun. We were just hiking along. And, you know, as with any sort of trek, like one of the best parts about it is the people that you meet along the way. It's also very fitting because I was there on this trek with my wife and we were celebrating our 25th wedding anniversary. And you were there celebrating a honeymoon and a brand new marriage with your husband, Brandon. Like, how awesome.
Yes.
I'm just super excited. One of the things that we talked about while we were walking along on the trail was some of the other adventures that we've been on. And as soon as you said, one of the recent adventures that I did was this thing called the W Trek in Patagonia, my lights went up. Oh my gosh, this is amazing because that's very much at the top of my list and hopefully one of the treks that I do next. And so super excited to talk with you about your experience on the W Trek. Fun fact that I don't know whether I shared with you, but many of my listeners know, I'm a real estate broker and the name of my company is W Realty Group.
Okay.
The last name like Wurzbacher, you know, W is just a whole lot easier. So of course, like when I thought about Patagonia and I found out that there's a trail called the W Trek, I obviously had to go. So this is why I'm so excited about our talk today. So there we go. Time for me to shut up. Sarah, I'm so excited. Can you just like dive right in and set some context here for listeners? What is the W Trek?
Yes. So for the longest time, the W Trek was probably the best hike that I've done. Tour de Mont Blanc might have gone up there just by the varied experiences and some of the things you're able to do. But the W Trek is a 5-day, 4-night hike in the Patagonia region on the Chilean side. And what you're able to do is it's a hut-to-hut hiking. So you're not just taking day trips. You're not, going back to the creature comforts every single night. You start in one place, and then every single day you hike to your next place that you stay. And you do that for a couple of nights. And I will say I did it in 5 days, 4 nights. I think there's different lengths that you can do it. Yep. But I found that was a good length where I could do extensions if I wanted, take my time if I wanted, and really make sure I was exploring the full area of the trek the whole time.
Yeah. Why is it called W?
It's called the W Trek because the trail itself is in the shape of a W. So you sort of start here, at least the way I did it. You go up for one side, then you go up to the middle part of the W, down, and then back up again. So the trail is in the shape of a W, which is why they call it a W Trek. So you are coming back sometimes, which I know some people don't love. Some people like more of like a loop hike, which actually in the same region, there is the O Trek, which is a 8-day trek, which is a lot harder and more difficult and a little bit more rugged on that backside. It's a one-way track that you do it, and then you have a little bit of backtracking in it, but it was a really cool experience.
Awesome. So darn it, it's not named after me and my business is what you're telling me.
I actually am curious if it was named after maybe one of the first explorers, but I just know it as the trail that you take whenever you look at maps. You can see it's a very clear W path that you'll be walking over the course of your 4 to 5 days.
I love it. Well, W Realty Group has certainly been the number one sponsor of this podcast. So when I make it to the W Trail, there definitely is going to be some promotion there, I think, for sure. Super excited. Okay, so it's in Patagonia. It's in Chile. Can you drill down even further? National park that it's in?
Yes, it's in Torre del Paine. I'm probably not saying that correctly, but Torres del Paine National Park. You have to take a bus to get there, and it's about a 2-hour bus. So it's really away from civilization, which is one of my favorite parts of hiking and traveling. And then throughout the trek, you can also stay in different types of accommodations. So when I did it, I stayed in more of the lodges style, so more like cabins or dorm rooms, something like that. But there's also different camping options, or there's also options for how much food they provide versus how much food you bring. So I think one of the reasons why it's such a popular trek is there's different levels based on budget, based on experience, based on comfort. And so it was my first solo multi-day trek. And I think it was the perfect one because of all those different levers that you can pick and choose, like what's best for you.
Yeah. So, I mean, is this like legit backpacking, or is it hybrid, like kind of a hybrid model?
Yeah, I'd say it's a hybrid, which is personally my favorite because I love the hiking and I like camping, but I also really like my shower at the end of the day.
Nice.
And so when I did it, I stayed in the lodges, like I said. This was actually my 25th birthday present to myself. And so I did want to celebrate a little bit and make sure I was, doing nice experiences. And then also I was traveling solo, so I wasn't about to do camping by myself. Some people might be brave enough for that. It wasn't in my cards for that trip. It's definitely a hybrid because you do carry all of your clothes and water and gear on your pack each day. I don't know if there's a courier service where they can transport your bag from place to place. I don't remember seeing that as an option, but it's only 5 days. And if you stay in something like a lodge, you don't have to carry as much of your tent or food. So again, that's where I think this is a really great hybrid where you get the backpacking experience where you're definitely carrying the full weight. And a big thing for Patagonia is to be prepared with layers and food and all that stuff. But you don't have to carry everything all at once if you don't want to. But it's also not a light thing where you're just carrying a day pack. So it's definitely a good hybrid option.
Got it. I love that. Okay. So you said like this is the thing that you're supposed to know in Patagonia, you got to be prepared for layers and food. Talk to me about that.
They say that in the W Track and in this national park or Patagonia overall, you have to be prepared for 4 seasons in 1 hour. So I actually got really lucky. I went in February of 2020 and we had beautiful weather basically the entire time. But I, of course, was traveling solo, hiking solo. So I wanted to be prepared for everything. So not just should you dress in layers, but you have to make sure you have all the right equipment in your pack so that you can be prepared for torrential rain. So recommend a good raincoat and rain pants because you don't want to get to your campsite the next night and not have anything dry. Yep. You need to be prepared for colder weather because you're definitely in higher altitude. So having like a good packable puffer, then some good base layers that are, from good fibers and will keep you warm. But then it gets really hot also. So I definitely for a couple of days was, stripped down to my tank top and had to also slather on the sunscreen. A maybe well-known fact, but I learned it in my research, is that there's actually a hole in the ozone layer around that region. And as you can see, I'm very pale. So I made sure to bring extra sunscreen, and you can really feel it also, like the heat from the sun was very strong. So make sure to be prepared for that. Patagonia is also well known for being very strong with wind gusts. And so one thing I remember getting that honestly, I probably didn't need in hindsight, but again, I had great weather, was for my sunglasses, which are of course a must for hiking. I got that like string that you attach so that it stayed onto my face in case it was really windy. I read online that people would lose their sunglasses or their hats like all the time because it was so windy. So I remember getting that and having something so I can also hold my sunglasses like on my chest and I didn't lose them. Again, I don't think I needed it, but when you're traveling solo, I think one of my mottos in life in general is failure to prepare is preparing to fail. I think I exemplify that even more when I'm traveling solo because you don't have anybody else to rely on. I did come to see that hiking culture is very kind and welcoming, and everyone was offering to help. Like one night I had some pretty bad blisters. People were offering Band-Aids, we're offering tape, we're offering like different solutions. So, people are very helpful, but a good bet is to always be prepared just to take care of everything on your own if you have to.
Yeah. So two follow-ups. Number one, you mentioned altitude. On this trek, do you remember like roughly how high you got?
I don't remember that. It wasn't that high. Definitely wasn't altitude that we had to adapt to. Like, I don't remember having any altitude sickness. This is why this is also a really great hike, is you don't have to acclimatize too much compared to other multi-day treks.
Right.
So that was a big benefit of, there was an ascent and a descent, but it wasn't significant to the point that I remember feeling any kind of sickness or having to plan for that.
Got it. Right. So you and I did the Tour de Mont Blanc, and we both kind of experienced that. And that was sort of an ascent and a descent every day. And I think like the most that we got up to on that trek was like around 9,000 feet. So I'm guessing. And then you mentioned like getting lots of help. Like you mentioned people helping you with, but how busy was it when you went in February?
It was pretty busy. There definitely were people, and there's definitely parts of the trail where you see more than others, because while I said this is like a multi-day trek that I did to do the full W, there are parts that you can just day hike. So for example, like the part to the famous Las Torres lookout, like definitely was more crowded than more towards the end to get to Glacier Gray. Like I remember there not being that many people around there. It also has to do a lot with how people space out their day and their traveling. So I think I did like a longer option by doing 5 days, 4 nights. And so I remember the day when I went to Glacier Gray, people were really rushing because they had to get like there and back to their catamaran all in one day. Yes. Versus I had an extra night. And so I had time to like slow down. I remember I took a little nap in the afternoon and then did like the extra hike to get to the glacier and then back. Yep. So you definitely saw people, but it was more about people that you met in your accommodation. So people that I met in the lodging, and then people that I would then hike with the next day. And those are more the people that I interacted with. And you see people definitely like stops for lunch and snacks and plenty of people to take your pictures, which I know sometimes solo travelers are always concerned, like who's going to take your picture? Or even these days, like selfies are such big things. I feel like people are afraid to ask others for pictures, but I never have that problem. And people are always very willing to help. So it was crowded, but not as crowded as Tour de Mont Blanc. Tour de Mont Blanc was way more crowded than the W.
Good to know. Now, you said you went in February. Being on the other side of the equator, that would be their summer.
Yes.
Is it so fair to say that's their busy season?
Yeah, it was be their busy season because of the weather. It definitely wouldn't want to be down there maybe in their winter time. I'm sure it's a very different experience. But I will say it did get chilly because you are so far south. Because that's where, again, like the layers, like definitely starting in the morning, preparing more for cold. And then as the day goes on, getting down to the warm layers.
Right. Okay. So 25th birthday celebration, you can go anywhere. Why did you choose the W Trek?
So I really wanted to do something adventurous. I was feeling a little bit of my quarter life crisis happening. I had been working for a couple of years, really wondering, what am I doing in life? Of course, I didn't know that COVID was going to happen. And so I wanted to go someplace where I could really celebrate and also explore and have some time to think and reflect. And hiking is one of those best things. Then as a single female traveler, I always look into what the safety areas are. And Chile and Argentina, because I did both sides of Patagonia, are overall pretty safe for solo female travelers. And then I just started to do research into options. And this W Track, I think I read it on somebody else's blog and looked like a really great option. I did book it pretty late. And so I booked it through a company. And by booking through a company, they had spots already reserved. And that's how I was able to stay in their accommodations, because these things book out like a year in advance. And I have not gotten to the point where I'm planning my traveling that far in advance. And so I was able to get a spot. I remember I booked it, I think it was November the year before. So pretty last minute. And it just seemed like the perfect adventure and way to disconnect, try new things, and really explore the world of that section.
Hey, everyone, it's Scott here. This podcast is a passion project for me because I absolutely love adventure. And it's thanks to the effort of my residential real estate team here in Charlotte, North Carolina, that many of you know as the W Realty Group, that this podcast gets funded. This awesome group of people have unmatched levels of competence and caring for our clients. If you know of anyone looking to buy or sell a home, our team serves the Charlotte, North Carolina market, but we can also help you find an agent anywhere throughout the US or Canada through our highly connected network. When you support our real estate business, you are also supporting this podcast. Thanks for listening, and thanks for your referrals. You and I spoke a little bit in advance of this call, and I forgot you mentioned COVID. So this trip was in 2020?
Yeah, February 2020. I was
So
in
literally
Argentina when the first positive COVID case was alerted in Buenos Aires.
Yeah.
One tip is whenever I travel, I always register for the American government, the STEP Traveler program.
Yep.
And so I remember I was in Argentina in the southern part, but I got the alert that the first positive COVID was in Buenos Aires. And I'm like, oh, here we go. But this was early February. So didn't think too much of it. Was able to travel, get home, no problem. Still had a little bit of work travel before things officially shut down in March.
Yeah, what a great grand finale before a little shutdown, huh?
Yes, it was. I'm glad I did it because then there was no travel for a good chunk of
But
time.
you got home, no problems. There are no concerns.
No issues. This was beginning
Yeah.
of February, so it was really just the starting of what was happening.
Yeah, and for listeners, I think it's actually a good point to stop on real quick. You mentioned the Department of State STEP program. Can you talk about that? Because I think that is a good program.
Yeah, so I learned about it when I was traveling in college. And basically, what you do is you register with the State Department of the United States government and you tell them, your information, just basic stuff like your name, email, phone number, and then where you're going. And what they then do is one, they know where you are, which in case of emergency, they would be able to help with evacuations or issues that you might be having. And then two, they also send alerts. So like this COVID alert. I was in Indonesia and they sent an alert about some terrorist activity. So you don't want to go to that section. And it's just a way for the government, which sounds a little big brother, but know where you are. But for me, that's a comfort where if something was to happen, I would be on their radar. They would know that there's an American citizen in this area who's traveling, not an expat, not someone living there. And I would think that would help a lot in case something happens and I need to evacuate or get out of there.
Yeah, it's just smart. Things happen. It's just smart
Yep.
to register. So can you talk a little bit about traveling solo? Was this have you traveled solo before
Yes.
this trip?
Yep. So I did my first solo travel, actually studied abroad in Florence, Italy, and I had an amazing roommate who was my travel buddy. But one weekend, she had to come back to the United States for her sister's wedding. And I didn't want to not travel that weekend because only had a semester in Europe. And so again, I Googled what are the safest places in Europe for solo female travelers. And it said Bruges, Belgium. And so that's where I did my first weekend away, just myself, and stayed in hostels, which I think is also a really great way to meet people. And I find completely safe. I mean, you have to do your research, look into the reviews. I find everyone's like very kind, very welcoming, again, always willing to help you. And so that was my first solo travel, just like a weekend. And for some safety tips, always make sure somebody else knows your itinerary. So at least where you're staying, maybe like roughly what you're doing. That has always been my parents. They'll have like my itinerary, roughly what I'm doing, check in with them. Like I'm here, going here, not constantly. I usually travel, especially at that time without data. So it wasn't a constant check-in. It was more just when you arrive or depart from a place. Or even when I did just like a random day tour with like a private person. So I was in kind of a stranger's car, just send them, hey, this is where I'm going to be today. Here's the contact information. I should be back by XYZ. And thankfully my parents aren't very nervous people. Like if I didn't get back on the dot, they wouldn't be super concerned. Thankfully, we haven't had any issues. So they haven't had to contact authorities or anything like that. But that's just something I've always done. And so I did that weekend in Belgium. And then I also, when I graduated, I did a month in the Balkan states in Southeastern Europe, traveling all around there solo. So I definitely done it before. This was my first time in South America, which is why I did make sure to go someplace that was highly rated for safety.
Yeah, but I'm always so inspired by solo female travelers. I think it's courageous, but it's also like it's inspiring. And I guess I just want to ask you, and we're going to come back to Patagonia because I have a few more questions about the W Trek, but I'm curious if you could talk a little bit about like the difference between solo travel versus traveling with others and like what you get out of those experiences that's different. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
So first, thank you. I mean, I definitely try to encourage everyone to solo travel at least once in life because I think it's a very empowering experience. And for me, you can see it from the first time that I did it. I started doing solo travel because I didn't want to miss out just because I didn't have someone to travel with. And I also wanted to be the right person to travel with. I think early on to sort of realize what my travel style was. I like to do a lot of things. I have a lot of high energy. I like to do a little bit more on like the budget, especially back in college. As of course you get older, you can spend more and more money. I don't like to take 5-hour lunch breaks and sitting at a cafe, like strolling through I like to stroll through the streets, but not like do it slowly, I guess. Yeah. And so I always realize that I'd rather either travel alone than travel with the wrong person. And I don't want to be waiting to find that right person and miss out on a lot of really great opportunities. And so that's why I really started traveling solo. And then from there, I find that when you travel solo, you have a really great experience because you're able to do whatever you want, which means, one, you learn a lot about yourself. If there is an issue, like you know how to manage it. And, there's always resources again. You're rarely alone in this world these days. You have to figure it out on your own, which is why I think it's an empowering experience. I think it builds a lot of confidence that, I had this problem. I got through it all by myself. I was able to come out on the other side. I always tell myself, like, what's the worst thing that can happen? And usually it's fine. You manage through it. Then I also feel like when you travel solo, that's when you meet the most people and you learn the most about your destination and about others. Because when you're traveling with somebody, unless they're also super open, like my travel buddy from study abroad was the best. Like we traveled together, but we still met a lot of people and we didn't have to compromise that much because we both did the same thing. And I would say a similar thing traveling with my husband now, which is very nice.
Yeah.
But when you're alone, you really have to go outside your comfort zone if you want. Because again, there's also pros, cons. If you want to just be by yourself, not talk to anyone, you can definitely do that for 10 days. Or you can meet people in your hostel room. You can meet people on walking tours. You can meet people at restaurants. Like there's all these ways that you can meet people. And because you're alone, you're more likely to go out of the way. And so to bring up an example from the W Trek of when I was a solo female traveler. So my first night, I stayed in a dorm. And then and in my dorm that night was this Chilean couple. And we started talking and was speaking my, broken Spanish. I'm decent, but it's been a bit. And so then the next day, I ended up hiking the entire day with them and talking to them in, again, Spanish. They didn't really speak any English, so I had to speak Spanish. We muscled through it. Like we understood each other in the end. And that was one of my favorite experiences. And that wouldn't have happened if I was with another American. We would have just gone on our way. It would have been okay. We talked in the dorm, but we wouldn't have continued the rest of the day because it was challenging. Like I remember not really being able to communicate perfectly, but we got through it with my broken Spanish because I think they also wanted to look out for me a little bit. You find that also a lot as a solo female traveler. Like I feel like people adopt you a lot of times and want to make sure that you're safe and want to, keep you company. And I feel like that was a really amazing experience that wouldn't have happened necessarily if I was with somebody else because you cling to your comforts, you cling to your people that you know, and there's like no need to go out if there's somebody else always there with you.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing you say is that by traveling solo, first of all, when you travel solo, in theory, you're traveling alone, but you're really not because you're going to meet tons of people. But I'm also hearing you say that traveling solo makes you more open to meeting new people and having those kind of newer experiences.
Yep. Yeah. And then again, I think it is the mentality of you can do whatever you want. Yeah. If you are the type of person that likes to sleep till noon, you can do that. If you like to wake up more towards like 7, 8 in the morning and do that, you can do that. So I feel like that's a really great experience also because you can also understand more what you want to do when there's no outside influences, other pressures, other people guiding your travel style. You can really figure out what's best for you and what you prefer.
Yeah. I'm curious, do you find when you travel solo do you find yourself being more reflective?
Yes, I think that was part of my goal for my 25th quarter life crisis trip was thinking through things and having a lot of time to really think. I would say hiking also does that in general. I mean, we all had those really hard ascents that you're doing. You're just focusing, pedal to the metal, trying to get one foot in front of the other, going up some steep hill. And I find that's a really good time to also think and be reflective. But it definitely gives you time with your thoughts and being able to be on your own and think through things, what you're seeing, what you're interacting with, broad life goals. So that's definitely a benefit as well.
All right. So you said it. So I'm going to come back to this. Like, what were your quarter life crisis reflections that you took from the W Trek?
Well, a fun one was I thought that my job's actually not that bad because I get to get 2 weeks off. And I had used a bunch of points that I gotten from work for traveling to pay for my flights for Patagonia. And so I realized I think it's actually a really great job and where I am at 25. And then the other big one was I wanted to focus more on dating, which of course was not good timing with COVID that hit a month later. So I did get back and start dating a bit, and then COVID happened. So that got shut down pretty quickly. But those were the two big reflections that I remember coming out of is, okay, even though the job I was in consulting at the time can be a little tough, and there's definitely some negatives there with the travel was kind of grueling and maybe I wasn't always completely challenged by everything. It's actually a pretty good job for where I was in my life. And then, yeah, let's focus on dating. And then COVID happened. So that got shut down pretty quickly.
Yeah, but hey, you crushed it because I met you 5 years later and you're on your honeymoon. So
yes,
you did something right. And actually, I'm thinking like solo traveling is probably a great way to like brush up on your like meeting new people skills.
That's true. You definitely get good practice of talking to people. And I definitely don't love surface conversations. So you get past that pretty quickly. Hopefully you get the where are you from? What do you do? Et cetera. And then you dive into the meat of the person. I really love to do that.
Right. Well done. It seems like your reflections paid off and it gave you what you needed to come back and move into the next adventure. And no more solo traveling for a while. You've got a whole new adventure with an awesome partner. So that's great.
Yes, that's very true. Yeah, actually, I did a solo trip after dating my husband, then boyfriend. And I did realize it's a little bit less fun at that point when you have found that perfect person to spend your life with. But I still think it's a really important thing. So I'm glad I did it when I was younger.
Yeah, 100%. You know, that's one of my big things is always wanting to share that experience. So I do want to just come back to WTrek, just kind of finish up a couple of things. When you're in Patagonia and specifically Torre del Paine, is that what you said?
I think so.
Okay, that's good. It's better than I'm not, you know.
I think it's Torres de Paine.
Torres de Paine. Okay, good. So what can I expect to see there? What am I going to experience there in terms of like the geography and the land?
One of the things I loved about the WTrek is I feel like it has a lot of iconic views. And so at least for my first day, I believe you're doing it. There's either you can go from the east to west or west to east. And so I started sort of on the right side and then went to the left if you're looking at a map. And so my first day was really the hike up to Los Torres Lookout, which is one of the most famous areas. There's actually 3 towers of granite or whatever rock there is just soaring into the sky. And then there's a little lake in the valley right above you. So that was beautiful. And you have to, of course, climb up rocks to get there. So definitely on the packing list, I recommend hiking poles very highly. I got them for the first time for this hike. I do have genetically like not the best knees. And so I knew it would be helpful. But again, when you're traveling solo, like you don't have a hand to hold on to. And this was like a longer distance hike that I'd ever done. So I really recommend hiking poles. I think they help a lot from the up and the down and just overall stability when the terrain might be a little bit iffy. And then other days you're walking and you have basically there's this huge lake on the left side when you're walking, again, in my direction. And so that's a beautiful turquoise, like cerulean blue color. And then other days there's jetting cliffs that you see and just mountain peaks. You go through a couple of meadows, a couple of forests. And then one of the best days, so I think will be a first day if you go in the other direction, is the Great Glacier. And so I didn't really know what a glacier was. It's pretty much just a lot of snow and a lot of ice all together. But it is really beautiful, and especially seeing the contrast between the white and the turquoise blue water. And then you have the mountains, which are like a gray in the back. And you can sit there and watch for a while. You can see some of the iceberg like calving, which is breaking into the water. Hopefully not too much because you don't want it to be melting, but it's cool to just sit there and sort of watch the glacier and how the ice is changing. And yeah, I think the mountains are the biggest highlight, just really stark contrast between the sky and the gray and then the turquoise blue, cerulean blue water. That was really stunning.
I love it. I haven't used this word on the podcast for a while, but one of the things that I used to talk about a lot was my favorite word, awe. And my favorite definition is a feeling of reverential respect mixed with fear and wonder. Just curious if you had any moments of awe in Patagonia.
I would say the last day for me, so on the boat ride you take a catamaran from the last point where I finished back to the beginning part of the national park. And again, it's just the contrast from the water to the mountain to the sky. And I think specifically in Patagonia, the mountains are so jagged and sharp that it's such a contrast to what you're seeing in the blue sky with the, I got lucky. I had fluffy white clouds and it was like gorgeous weather. It was amazing. There's very dramatic, very jagged. And I think there's like 4 highlights. It's the first day with Los Torres lookout, and they were exactly how I imagined. Then there's this day where I went to the Britannico lookout, and now same thing, like really jagged edges. Then the Great Glacier, and then this last day, this catamaran across the water. It was my phone background for the longest time. Nice. Again, the blue with the mountains and the sky. So it was just stunning. And that was probably the most beautiful I'd ever had. And so I've done a lot of hiking and traveling, and everything gets compared to Patagonia. And Tour de Mont Blanc came close. I still have to decide which one is like the favorite. They're so hard to compare, but nothing else I've seen in the world has compared to what's in Patagonia.
So I wanted to ask you about comparison, because that was something that I experienced on the Tour de Mont Blanc. Like, I've seen some pretty cool mountain ranges. I got to go to the Himalayas. I've been in the British Canadian Rockies and some of the mountains that we have here in the US. And I remember when I got to the Tour de Mont Blanc, like initially trying to compare what I was experiencing there with other places that I've been. And I think I just decided you just can't. It's just, you just have to appreciate each one for what they are. I guess that said, is there anything that you can compare? Like if somebody's never been to Patagonia before, like how would you best describe W-Trek, Patagonia, that Torres del Paine to somebody that's never been there before? What would you compare it to?
I think another trek that I've done that's a little similar is the Milford Track in New Zealand. Also cool. Different, but similar. I think for me, what I loved about the W-Track is they're all in a national park. And it's the hut-to-hut hiking. So again, there's that hybrid benefit of you're going from place to place and you're able to really enjoy the hiking and maybe not some of the burden in my mind of carrying like all your camping gear. I know some people love that, and some people do the W-Trek with that option. But there's also, like I was talking to someone on Tour de Mont Blanc, and like they didn't know that we had hut-to-hut hiking in New Hampshire in America. I've never done it personally, but they have similar lodges styles that you can stay in. So again, a lot of people don't like sleeping in a tent, don't like that vibe, but you're still able to have an amazing hiking experience, get a little bit more out into nature in these different areas. I will say that's the biggest difference between the W or the Milford Track or even this New Hampshire one and Tour de Mont Blanc. Tour de Mont Blanc is a lot more in civilization because of the makeup of Europe, and it's such a dense continent, dense area that I felt like we were in civilization a lot because there's like these little towns, even in random places in the mountains. Like Trieste has like a grocery store. Right. Like that's where you're not experiencing in these. These are more hut to hut, but there's only this like one lodge or this one camping ground to stay in, versus in Tour de Mont Blanc, you could stay in this whole town. I mean, I don't think we stayed in the same accommodation the entire time we were doing it. And then there's all the different options, but you can also just very easily go to town and grab dinner if you want, which there's pros and cons to that too. So when I tell people about Tour de Mont Blanc, I talk a lot about the refugios and how it feels like you're having amazing scenery and hiking, but you're also like in civilization every night if you want to be. So it's like a nice contrast.
Yeah, it was. It was a nice way. It was a nice way to celebrate a honeymoon and a nice way to celebrate an anniversary for sure.
Yes.
Speaking of the Tour de Mont Blanc, but I do like the hut to hut because I love backpacking, but to not have to carry like tent gear and really, I mean, you don't have to carry as much food either because you can get to like the next place to eat. So, this is awesome. Patagonia, W-Trek, huge on my list. Hopefully there'll be another episode at some point where I can come back and I hope to be able to share my own experience there someday. I think that'll be awesome. But a little bit more about you, Sarah. So you are a product manager in the digital world in New York City. It's like one of the most vibrant, alive, busy cities in the world. But yet you have this adventure mindset and, this knowing about getting out into nature and the impacts that can have, which, I think for most people is a stark contrast to the idea of New York City and what that represents for people. So I want to dig into that a little bit with you, but can you just give us some context? Like, how did your adventure lifestyle start? Where did this adventure spirit begin for you?
So I think I always was not actually adventurous. I used to be a very shy child, and I'm not sure exactly how I grew out of it, but at some point I did. I mean, I used to not like flying, and now I do it, pretty regularly. I used to not like sleeping away from my parents. And then I think I grew out of it just sort of in when I was a teenager, as most people do. And then the real kickoff of my travel bug was when I studied abroad in Florence, Italy, when I was a senior in college. So I did it after I kind of accomplished like everything I'd wanted in school, had my full-time job already, which was really nice, lined up for after graduation.
Oh, wow.
And
That's
so
awesome.
I was able to really enjoy traveling, and I just always wanted to do it. I think my parents travel a lot, maybe not as much as they do now, but I think they always encourage us to go abroad whenever we could. We did a couple of like programs when we were younger, but it was really study abroad that was the kicker. And I only had class on Mondays and Wednesdays because I was a senior and I had my job already, and I was doing a global studies minor. So all my classes were like Italian focused and really focused on culture. And that really allowed me to travel that whole semester. I went to 14 countries between weekend trips and a little bit of time after that. And I really just realized how much I love it. I love to experience new things. I love to meet new people. I love food. I love culture. I love walking, which is like a big thing in Europe, and just traveling all over the place. And so I just realized it was something I really wanted to prioritize in life. I actually think I changed a little bit after that semester. There's the European phrase a lot where Europeans work to live. You know, I was a business and psychology major in school, definitely very high achieving, worked really hard in college. And then I went to Europe and I was like, wow, this is a really nice life. And even I came back my second semester and, you know, someone wanted me to work over spring break on a project, which like normally you would do. But I was like, why would I do that on my time off? And so being in Europe definitely changed my mentality a little bit. And then I'm still a hard worker. I still am, you know, doing great at work, but I want to make sure to always also prioritize that travel and that new experiences. When I first started work, I wanted to make sure I still went to a new place every single month. So I kept that up for a couple of maybe like a year and a half. And it didn't have to be like international, but even just going to a new place in New York or a new place in Pennsylvania, like small things like that. And then also between school and working, I was fortunate to be able to push off my start date as much as possible. And so I took 5 months off, and that's when I did, 3 months of traveling, a couple of trips here and there with a friend, with my sister, a little bit solo. And then after starting working, I just always prioritized it. We fortunately had time off every year from Christmas to New Year's, and then also around July 4th. And so I was always traveling during that time, taking trips, taking as much vacation as I could, sort of bundling things together. Patagonia was my first big trip since working. It was about 3 years in, and I took 2 weeks off, which I know to Europeans is nothing, but to Americans, taking 2 weeks off is a lot. And I remember I had to prepare for it and really make sure everything was in order with work, but it was so worth it to really get out. And so I think my sense of adventure sort of developed in like my teen years, really kicked off when I studied abroad, and then continued into adulthood just by constantly prioritizing it. Living below my means. New York City's expensive. I could have afforded my own apartment probably right from the get-go, but I honestly waited till I was like in my late 20s to get my own apartment, because I always preferred to use my money for traveling, for experiences, for doing things with friends over something like, my own apartment or like the nicest gadgets or, the newest phones, things like that. So that was just a priority that I always seemed to make.
Hey everyone, it's Scott here. Did you know that the members of my real estate team, W Realty Group, are listening to their own voices that call to adventure by setting big goals? Some of those goals include planning trips to Bali and the Kingdom of Bhutan, buying investment homes, and running the Chicago Marathon. At W Realty Group, we support and encourage these big goals and want to help turn them into reality. We're currently looking to add new members to the team. If you know a great real estate agent in the Charlotte, North Carolina area that would benefit from being part of our team, please send a text, an email, or give me a call. And know that when you support W Realty Group, you're also supporting this podcast. Thanks for listening. I'm curious because so much of this is like you obviously like prioritizing how you're going to spend your money, prioritizing how you're going to spend your time. You talked about the breaks that you've had and like always plugging trips into those like windows of time that you have. And living in New York, I mean, and working in corporate culture, I'm sure maybe there were some people that were around you that had the same mindset as you, but I'm sure that you were also kind of bombarded with people that didn't think that way and that were more into the materialistic and spending their money on things instead of experiences. Like, is that hard?
Sometimes, but I think when you're sure of yourself, which I think comes from doing, again, building up that confidence, exploring new things, really trial and error. I don't really find it that difficult because you just know what's important to you and how you want to be spending your time, how you want to be spending your money. I mean, I think it's important to pick a partner that agrees with that. I think that'd be challenging. Thankfully, Brandon and I are pretty agreed on that. So I think that's where it could become difficult when there's like shared finances and shared goals in life and maybe you don't agree. But I think with other friends, I mean, New York's still expensive. Don't get me wrong. I'm still going out to eat with friends. We're still going to shows. We're still doing like a lot of fun things. It's just maybe not necessarily about the materialistic. And also just I couldn't. Like, I think a big thing is when people travel, people get souvenirs, which is totally fine. I was traveling too much to get souvenirs. Like, one, I didn't want to carry it. And two, what was I going to do with it? Like, I didn't have space for all these things. And so the souvenir I actually had since I was very young, when my dad used to go on business trips and he would send me postcards, was postcards. They're so cheap, so easy to carry, so light. And then I don't send them. I just kind of keep them. And now I'm trying to write on them a little bit more, like the memories or the stories from where they are. But I found that was like a nice souvenir that I got, or even I can ask someone. Again, it's not that much to ask someone, hey, can you get me a postcard from your trip to Egypt? So I feel like that's an easy one.
Nice. So you've been to 54 countries. I mean, it started with a study abroad to Florence, and now all of a sudden, like 54 countries. That's a lot.
Yes.
Was this sort of this whole becoming an adventurer? Is it like a snowball thing for you where, you know, it's like it just keeps like you keep moving faster and faster? And yeah, does that make sense?
The travel bug is real. You get bit by it and then it's a fun experience. I mean, hopefully, again, this is also temperaments. Like I have a friend who doesn't like flying and so she doesn't enjoy travel, or people who really, you know, are really stressed with their day-to-day life. And so on their time off, like they need to just sit on a beach and relax, and like that's fine too. Yeah. But I think it is that travel bug. You get bitten by it. You really learn how much it excites you, how much it energizes you, how passionate you are about it. And then you make it work. You make it fit into your life. You make it part of your journey, part of your story. And I was pretty aggressive about getting to 50. I think I've calmed down since then. Like I was really excited. A lot of people have like the goal of like 30 by 30, but I kind of hit that pretty early. And so I really wanted to get to 50 was a big one. And now I think things are really going to taper off. But I do think it's that snowball that you said, where once you do it once, you figure out what you like also, like for a long time. So around Patagonia and right after I started work, I was in a South America kick. So I was doing a lot of trips to South America. One, I was practicing my Spanish. Don't quiz me. But again, I was practicing my Spanish. Two, it was pretty inexpensive, which right out of college, living in New York City, like that was really favorable. And three, because I had limited time off, the flights were really easy. You took a red eye overnight, didn't have to miss any time for work. You traveled all week and then you took a red eye back and you went to work the next day. This is when I was in my early 20s and maybe wasn't as impacted by red eyes as much.
Right.
And so you find out what you like and then you kind of stick to it and keep going. Like I know what I like and I know what I don't like, and I'll keep doing that for the near future.
So in this snowball, it started with study abroad in Florence. Like you've got a confidence about knowing what you want and this, you know, this knowing how you want to prioritize your time. Like, was there a moment or any moments where you were just like, this is how I want to live? Or was it like a slow progression?
Well, so interestingly, as much as I love travel, I also really love community. And so whenever there's been the thought of would I ever quit my job and travel the world or travel full time, like that's definitely never been for me. This is definitely a hobby and a passion and something I like to do for fun. But I also really enjoy being near my family, setting down roots, having a community, being with people that I love to come back to, which is also something that I feel like has changed. Like when I did a trip recently and I was excited to go back home. Like you should love your life that you want to come back to it. Like it's a nice break. It's nice to travel, try new foods, try new cultures, meet new people, but also you should curate the life that you love to come back to it and want to be. Maybe I'm not excited to come back to work, but the other things I'm excited to come back to and be in the life that I'm living.
I love it. And it's a great segue to like being in nature, being in this like very quiet place, and then coming back to New York City. Can you compare and contrast like those worlds for you?
Yeah, I think that's one of the reasons why I like coming home. New York City is very exciting. And especially during COVID, when there was no travel in my life because of lockdowns and shutdowns and careful, et cetera, like that, I actually took a lot of time to explore New York City and be like a tourist in my own city, like walking the streets, making sure to look at the architecture. Done a couple of walking tours here. It's one of my favorite ways to see a new city abroad. And so we did some walking tours here in New York City. But I definitely love that there's always things going on, always events happening. And again, all different price points. Because again, I prioritize travel more than experiences here. Sometimes even like I'm not going to Broadway every single week. I do enter the lottery for Broadway a lot. And if I win the tickets, that's a really nice treat in going to that. But I think there's always something to be doing. I also really love walking around. Like that's a big thing in Europe and traveling overall. You know, I wear my Fitbit. I hit like 20, 30,000 steps a day. Here in New York, it's like easy to hit your 10,000 steps. Like you leave the apartment, you go to the office, or I work from home now. So I just have to do a couple of blocks, like walks around the block, and you hit your steps like really easily. And things are very convenient. And it's a nice place to live for me for now. But it is nice to also get the adventure, because the big thing New York City does not have, or like upstate New York or New Jersey, there's no good hiking here. You got to travel for that. And so I do feel like I've done a lot of traveling for hiking, because that is not something I can get here all the time.
Yeah, totally. Makes sense. Well, Sarah, newly married, like new chapter in your life. And I'm just curious how this, you know, your background of traveling to 54 countries and all the cool travel experiences that you've had, how do you see all of that sort of shaping like what's ahead for you?
Yeah, definitely won't be at the same pace. I think being single helped a lot with doing traveling. And then also just being unattached, like we rent, we don't have any kids, all of that definitely made a difference. So we are embarking on our next adventure of life, and we are trying to buy a home. So I am excited for some space, some green. So we are going to get out of New York City and move to Jersey and get more of that. But I don't anticipate travel being removed completely. It will be slower for a bit, just while we're getting everything done. That's what we did, this big adventurous honeymoon in Switzerland and France, and, you know, a little bit in Italy, which was definitely a highlight for me. So we've done a lot this year, sort of anticipation of a little bit of a slowdown, or we really settle in and get situated. And then hopefully we'll kick it off again. You know, I'll still have the same times off around Christmas and July 4th, and still like to take advantage of long weekends. So it is going to change, but I think I've accomplished a lot. So I'm okay and ready for the change. But I know it won't go away. Even, you know, little adventures every weekend can really bring that spark back alive.
Well, you know, adventure is all about kind of moving into the unknown, lots of uncertainty, lots of newness, lots of excitement. Buying a house is an adventure.
Yeah, I think I'd rather plan a worldwide itinerary for someone than buy a house, but we're getting there. We're figuring it out.
Yeah, well, you and I had a great conversation before we walked into this. And one of the things that we talked a lot about was learning and growing. And so I think, you know, new experiences, whether it's buying a house or traveling to a foreign country and meeting new people, there's always that learning and the growing that comes out of it. And I know that that's something that's important to you.
Exactly.
Yeah. So like, what's next for you in the immediate future? And like, how can people sort of connect with you?
Yeah. So besides buying a house, but one other thing I'm actually working on is I'm starting a travel blog. It's going to be called Search the World with Sarah. And this is something I've been working on for a while. So it's been brewing for many, many years. It actually came about because I have done a lot of traveling, and specifically, you know, people would ask me, have you been here? What are your recommendations? What should I do here? And so I started putting together some guides for people. And specifically, I have one for Italy because I studied abroad there. Cool. And I sent it to a friend, and he said, wow, this is so amazing. I have this different friend that's also going to Italy. Can I send your guide to them? And at first I'm like, yes, but I should really figure out a way to put this online, get it away so that people can, you know, send it to their friends, and then I can see it and have it be a little bit more easily accessible. And so that's something I'm really excited to be rolling out, and it's launching imminently. And that way, when people ask me recommendations, I can just point them to my blog and don't necessarily need to like scurry to like write something up for them on all of the different places that I've traveled. I've already done a lot of journaling. And so it's just about taking my thoughts and my experiences and getting it into a form for other people. So that's not just for me. So I'm really excited about that. And then I also post on social media. On Instagram is my only real social media. I think I'm linked to Facebook, but definitely more of a Instagram gal. And it's funny because most of my friends just say, oh, you travel all the time. It's more that I only really post when I'm traveling, and a little bit of my life here in New York City. but it's really the travel bug that I like to share and show people what I'm doing and all these amazing places in the world. Because I do think we're obviously not going to go through all 54 here, but some of the places that I've loved the most are the ones nobody would think to go to. And so I think these underrated spots are usually the best places that I would love people to consider more.
Oh, that's a teaser right there. Can you give me one or two of those?
Well, Patagonia, I think, is one, which is becoming more popular, but I don't think most people have that top of the list. Slovenia is one of my favorite places that I went to in the Balkan states. It's like Switzerland, but less expensive, which is a big thing. It has the Julian Alps, so it's a little bit different. Bolivia was a highlight in South America. Did a really great salt flats tour. The people were really kind, beautiful, different scenery. And those are like the top three that when people ask like favorite places you've been that maybe are under the radar, those are the three. And then New Zealand, but I think everyone knows about that one.
Love it. Well, they do, but it's so far away. That's on my list too, but love to get there. So people will be able to find out more about this on Search the World with Sarah.
Yes.
And we'll put that in the show notes along with your Instagram as well. This has been such a fun conversation. I'm excited, really hoping to get to do the W Trek, and I'll circle back with you. I'll probably have questions before I go.
Please reach out. Happy to answer them.
So I'll be reaching out to you on that. Hey, so, you've lived 54 countries. I mean, I know that there's going to be more, but you've lived this epic life and traveled to all these places. And I'm sure there's stories we didn't even scratch the surface on. It's an epic life. And I know at some point Hollywood is going to pick up on your story, Sarah. And when they do, I want to know who's going to be the Hollywood actress that's going to play you in your movie.
It's a good question. I have to go with a fellow redhead, probably. I know people can dye things and you can wear wigs, but I like the authentic redhead. So I probably would go with Isla Fisher.
Nice. Okay.
I feel like she also has like a very bubbly, like energetic personality.
Yeah.
I feel like she could be an emblem of me.
I love it. That's perfect. What's your movie going to be called?
Thinking about it now and reflecting on our conversation, a lot of my life has been between mountains and cities.
Oh, that's good.
It's really both of them. And I pick one because I live in the city and then I'm going to live more in the suburbs. But I love the mountains and they're always calling my name. And it's always the place I love to explore as well. So between mountain and cities.
That's
all
a
the
great
adventures
title. Oscar winner.
Love it. That'd be great. I'll write the screenplay.
Yeah, I love it. Isla Fisher, right?
Yes.
Did I say that right? Isla Fisher. Yeah.
I think that's how you say it. But yeah.
Between mountains and cities. This is so good. Hey, thank you so much for spending some time with me today. This has been so much fun. For those listening, I hope you've been inspired today as much as I have. Hope Sarah's story has encouraged you to listen to the voice inside that calls you to adventure, because we want to hear your story next. If you have a story to tell or just need a nudge to create one, please send me an email. We'd also appreciate it if you'd help us spread the word by leaving a review and sharing or tagging Inspire Campfire in your social media. And until next time, I want to encourage you to get outside. Thanks for listening. Sarah, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.